And you're welcome back. Between 2012 and 2015, the country experienced its worst power crisis in decades. Not only did this residential users suffer the persistent heat at night and the inability of school children to study at night, businesses were also at the mercy of the outages, with productivity dropping by some 10%. Well, those days are or might be coming back again. And this time, if maybe not worse, unless steps are taken immediately to renegotiate for power extensions or some negotiations with plants or to build new ones. This warning is coming from the Deputy Energy Minister, Andrew Japan-Mensah, who has confirmed that the Electricity Company of Ghana has been tasked to renegotiate contracts with independent power producers whose contracts nearing expirations, but under a new regime that discourages the take-or-pay arrangements. We'll hear from him shortly. But first, though, the World Bank Country Director, Pierre Laporte, has been speaking about these contracts and says that they are just too expensive for the country.
Our projects that we bring are very long-term concessional lending, okay? And for instance, Ghana, as a low-middle income country, borrows at terms that are mostly, actually they are concessional, okay, over 35% grant element, long-term 35, 40 years. We have a few windows now that are less concessional, but you know, this is at the discretion of governments. But in the overall scheme of things, we don't do lending that gets country in trouble. What gets countries in trouble is when sometimes short-term lending, like high domestic lending that happen in Ghana, or some of the bonds sometimes are not so cheap. And I must say that, yes, there was a World Bank guarantee.
And that's what you guaranteed government to go out and borrow.
We did in that time. No, this did not put you where. This is one of a small drop of water in the big bucket, right? So yes, with hindsight, when we look at it, we feel that maybe it's not something that we should have done in the way we did. But at the time, it was the only way to allow. Without that, Ghana could not access resources. But it's a lesson that we've learned. It's first to say that Ghana, World Bank, will honor its commitment and pay off the guarantee, which we've already done.
You've done already? You paid already, for the Eurobonds?
Yeah, we've settled. As the coupons will come, we will pay. We've already, in writing, the board has approved for us to fully pay the.
How much is that?
It's $400 million guarantee out of a $1 billion bond. And then Ghana will have to pay back over time, and we've offered some terms that we feel are reasonable for both sides for Ghana to repay. Other than that, I cannot say that World Bank borrowing has got Ghana anywhere.
The Deputy Minister for Energy, Andrew Japan-Mensah, has been speaking to Joy News today, indicating that the country is heading for another power crisis.
Now, this is the big picture. About half of Ghana's capacity to generate power is provided by independent power producers. Many of the deals we've signed with these producers are what we call take or pay. What does that mean? It means that as long as the power producer's equipment is there and is available and ready and working, whether we take power from them or not, we pay them. Currently, on average, we're spending around about $15–16 million a month on each of them, whether or not we take power from these producers. That's the situation. And the bill has been racking up. Our sources in the current ongoing negotiations between ECG and IPPs tells us that the bill is almost at $2 billion US. Please think about that. $2 billion US. We've gone begging for $3 billion US from the IMF. So we don't have that money, but we owe it. And they have given government an ultimatum. By the end of this month, if they don't pay 20% of that outstanding bill, they'll switch off. That's half of our capacity will switch off. We certainly don't want that to happen. So our conversation today is to figure out how to avoid that. What's the situation? How did we get here? And how are we getting out of it? All right? Churchill.
Well, so, could we have Andrea Japa-Mensah here, who's the Deputy Energy Minister. Honorable Mensah, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Great. So I know you have the Energy Sector Recovery Program, okay, where you promised us from 2019 to 2023, your target was to put the power sector in a financial viability status. What's happened? Why are we here today having this conversation?
Well, let me say good morning to our cherished listeners and, of course, those who are watching us on your social media platforms, and my colleague John and my senior brother, Mr. Awoche. Obviously, the ESRP program was a 30-item program that needed to be implemented between 2018 and 2023. Failing which, a business as usual, not doing anything situation would have yielded a debt of about 12.6 billion US dollars. Yes. And so the interventions that were introduced was intended to significantly reduce that business as usual position to about 5.2 billion. As we speak, I know that we are in the region of about 6.1, 6.2. What it means is that the ESRP implementation has significantly impacted the outcome or the outlook that we're looking at to the level where we are today. Some of the 30-item program has been completed, some are in progress, and so that's where we are, and we are actually in the process of reviewing the ESRP document consistent with the IMF program so that the ESRP can be extended to 2026 to try and bring some sanity within the energy sector space. So yes, we are on course. We haven't achieved all the targets yet, but significantly you can see that the ESRP program, the introduction of the cash waterfall mechanism, natural gas clearinghouse, and several other initiatives that is outlined in the document, some on the power sector, some on the gas front, and also some regulatory, including the full cost recovery and several other items, have significantly impacted the position.
Well, the opposition National Democratic Congress is meanwhile fighting back on these claims, accusing the World Bank country rep, Pierre Laporte, of doing a poor job. The Member of Parliament for Pro East in the Bono East region, Dr. Kwabena, of course, then Power Minister, and has been challenging these claims. But are the IPPs ready for a renegotiation of the take-or-pay situation? Joining us now for more is Eliklim Afetokbo, his Chief Executive Officer of the Independent Power Producers. Thank you, sir, for your time. I'm just wondering, listening to the Deputy Minister now, would you say that your stance has changed as IPPs on the appeal that you made to government some time ago about the outstanding payments to be settled immediately? Or you still want some more time, at least for government to settle your debts?
Good afternoon to you and the listeners. In the first place, let me state that our conditions or severity of our situation is something that cannot be negotiated. We have done everything possible to manage the situation, but it has gone beyond our control. So really nothing has changed. Our ultimatum to government, that is the June 30th, is still standing. We cannot overstretch ourselves. We cannot stretch ourselves beyond June 30th.
Interesting. And I just want to pick up on the statement you made earlier when you came out with the initial announcement on this. You indicated that, quote, regrettably, we must stress that unless we receive the payments, production of power cannot be guaranteed, unquote. What's that supposed to mean? That you will shut down your plants? Is that basically what you're indicating?
Exactly so. We cannot guarantee, that is to say that you cannot run an empty engine. So if the cash flow is not available, it's practically impossible for us to operate the power plants.
But how bad is your situation really? And I'm just wondering what the alternatives are. For now, it's about government providing you with the cash. But if the cash is not available and government guarantees other factors, i.e. the terms for your loans and others, Will that go a long way in at least averting this looming crisis that we're looking at?
Now, let me come in this way on the impacts. You know very well that we are private investors operating on lenders' funds or borrowed funds. Government has that luxury of privilege to go to its lenders and plead for mercy or plead for debt forgiveness. But for us as IPPs, we do not have that privilege. We cannot tell our lenders or creditors any story. That is the challenging situation we find ourselves in. So I would say government really need to do something to avert this possible crisis.
Okay, let's look at it this way. Government is constrained in terms of the financial requirements. You know that we're running the austerity plan with the International Monetary Fund, and then, of course, there are constraints in that regard. Are you mindful of all of this?
We are very mindful of it, but you know, this is purely a situation that could be avoided. You know, the cash waterfall was set up to provide some level of liquidity in the sector. But I can tell you for a year plus, we do not know as IPPs or key stakeholders what happens to the cash waterfall. We don't know how much comes in, we don't know how much is shared. The revenue that comes in as something that you will not imagine. So we don't really know. We set up institutions, at the end of the day, collapse it ourselves, then turn around to create stories that do not help the situation.
Okay, but then you've also been accused by experts of taking advantage of the take-or-pay situation. Some experts claiming that, of course, you make significant profits whenever you produce power that's not being used, for instance. You still get paid for it. So you can make up for the profits that you've made over the period. How about that?
I disagree with that assertion. It's purely lack of understanding or lack of knowledge about how it works. You know, when you take any power purchase agreement, which is usually between, let me say, a distribution utility and an IPP, basically we are talking about sharing of risks. The seller has its own risk to protect. The buyer also has its own risk to protect or mitigate. That is exactly what happens in the power purchase agreement. The take-or-pay contract, as you mentioned, is not a bad contract. What it means is that if I'm available, I have contracted loans to build the power plant for you based on your own demand plan. Based on your own demand plan, based on which I provide the capacity that you require. So if I am available and you are not ready to take it, you must compensate me so that I will be able to generate the required cash flow and pay my lenders when it becomes due. The same way, when the off-taker ECG is available to receive power from me and I am not able to generate, ECG has the right, the risk mitigation measure, to surcharge me or charge me for not being able to deliver that power. That is how it works. It's just unfortunate that at this point in time, it is in my favor. It doesn't mean that it is against the off-taker.
Yeah, but how does that make business sense? Apologies for using that word. When, of course, you are paying for power or energy we haven't used. That's the average concern.
Before you procure any generation capacity, for instance, in our country, we have Energy Commission that does the demand plan in collaboration with ECG, meaning they know what they need. They foresee the demand, the future demand, and for that matter, come out with the capacity that can be contracted. That is why you cannot just get up to say that I need 500 megawatts, I need 200 megawatts. Is there the demand for it? Is there the market for it? If you procure more than what you require, you will end up paying for what you have not used. That is the situation we are finding ourselves. But I am very sure ECG and EC has done a good job by doing a demand plan. It's just that maybe our systems are not able to put the energy that is generated to good use. We have institutions in the country right now that do not have access to the power requirement. A case in point is a B5 company that requires about over 100 megawatts of power, but getting less than 10% of that requirement. What are we doing to make good use of the energy.
Okay,
or the
so you mean to say that the
right
demand is still as high as we speak? It's not the case this is about prioritization on the part of ECG and others within the supply chain. But how about the concerns owing to the Ghanaian taxpayer? The fact that we're pumping money into places that we do not necessarily need.
Well, what you said is right. Like I've said, we need to exert more pressure on the one that is supposed to make available the generated power to those who are in need of it. Otherwise, the taxpayers' money, as you said, is going to pay for what they said, how do you call it? Free money, what they call free money to the IPPs.
So you mean to say this may be the fault of ECG instead?
I can confirm that they can do more.
How so? Because from the ministerial perspective, the belief is that some sort of auditing should take place. And that's in line with the conditionalities that we're running with the International Monetary Fund for possibly a relook into some of these take-or-pay arrangements. Are you open to that?
Oh, we are open to any kind of audit. I can tell you that these things has happened time and again. Auditing of our invoices, let me tell you, it's just a strategy to buy time, but all the same, they have every right to do so. But the issue is that the consequences of any further delay cannot be averted if that is a strategy to delay payment to us.
Oh, you feel this is part of the strategy to delay payment and that your 30th June deadline may not be met? You feel that's what government is doing?
Exactly.
But it's contained in the IMF documentation, isn't it, that all of these agreements do not necessarily bring some sort of value for money, a reason for which government may have to carry out this exercise. Why link that to a deliberate plan by government to not to pay the funds?
I don't really see the justification for that. Even before the IMF came out with this approval to release the funds to government, we have had several meetings with the IMF team to the extent that even they themselves said that government is not in a position to produce even one single figure as the total indebtedness to the sector. It's also interesting to know that for us as IPP, we have regular reconciliation with our partner ECG. So our books are in good position, leaving no doubt.
The last meeting with the finance minister, what were the terms in terms of what you concluded on, the timelines of the payment, and how many of your members are due in terms of the quantum?
All those are commercial issues or private issues that I wouldn't like to talk about.
Yeah, but you can speak to the fact that indeed you met the finance minister. There were some agreements
we had an engagement with the finance ministry.
That's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm asking about the timelines that we're giving, the firm assurances, and this whole issue about a possible audit come up.
Like I said, there are private commercial issues that varies with individual IPPs. I wouldn't like to comment on that.
But collectively speaking, you agree that some auditing has to take place, which will then allow government to meet the deadline. That's why I'm asking if you got the firm assurance. At least you're not disclosing which of the organizations, but did you get that clear sense of timeline from the minister and an assurance that the payments will be made by the 30th of June?
Honestly, we didn't get any clearance on that.
Okay, but then as we move on going into the future, you just have a couple of days to go, about 25 roughly. If the payments are not made available, and first of all, update us on the figures. Once you update us on the figures, if the payments are not made available, what then is likely to happen?
I have indicated from the beginning that we have overstretched ourselves. What we are able to do is what can carry us to the end of June and cannot go beyond. So let me say the position stands. There is nothing we could do about it. We have cases in the past whereby anytime we are pressed with time, we approach government in this manner. Government will come in and make some small payment to us. Then we'll go back and say that, oh, let's keep the faith. But I think this case, we have serious cases in hand. Most of our IPPs have defaulted in their loan repayment, their creditors here and there. Pursuing them, the kind of facilities we have with these private lenders, if it is about 1 month to the time, you will start receiving reminders that failure to pay your loan or your loan on due dates, these are the penal clauses for what we have signed for, which we do not have any option. And most of us have defaulted. And this is the case, the situation we find ourselves in.
Well, what would you say to any Ghanaian, an average Ghanaian out there who says, okay, if our powers go out or if there's blackout, we blame the IPPs for it?
This is not something that we expect to happen, but let me say it's a communal labor. Let everyone join hands to impress on government to make the monies available to us to keep our lights on.
Okay, that's a clear enough message. Ali Krima Fetogo, thank you for spending some time with us here.
Thank you very much.
On the Pulse. Grateful. You're watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel. When we get back, we'll bring you a number of stories, including what's happening to oil production. There's a likelihood that with the cuts in oil production, it may impact the Ghanaian economy. We'll talk about that shortly. But we can also hear from, of course, the former energy minister or Minister for Power, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who is challenging the World Bank country director.
We brought in the Ameri power plant, as you'll recall, as an emergency power plant. The emergency power Ameri plant had a capital recovery cost of $0.055 per kilowatt hour for year 1 to 5. And then it had a capital recovery price of $0 from year 6 to year 20. Therefore, for its 20-year lifespan, minimum lifespan, the levelized capital recovery was $0.2377. For comparison, we would take the Sonon Asogli power plant phase 1, which we call SAP 1. The capital recovery was initially 0.0523, negotiated in 2007. This was later renegotiated down to 0.0395 when the phase 2 and 3 were being added during the John Mahama regime, during the period of emergency. If we take the TICO, Takrady International Company, the tariff or the capital recovery there was 0.0365 in 2007. Jacobson, which is one of the plants at one of the IPPs, not emergency. The IPPs brought in 2014. The capital recovery was 0.03788, again lower than Sono Asogli phase 1. And this was brought in 2014. TT2PP, which is Tema Plant 2 power plant owned by VRA, has a capital recovery of 0.0309. These are higher than for the Ameri. It is important to raise these issues because the World Bank Group Country Director created the impression that all the power purchase agreements signed under the John Mahama regime were higher expensive and in his way contributed towards the challenges of the power sector today. I wish the country director had gone a bit back or gotten his researchers to look at the holistic picture. The country director also talked about take-or-pay agreements that the Mahama government contracted a number of take-or-pay agreements. It is interesting that since the Mahama government left office at the end of 2016, every single power purchase agreement, or indeed fuel purchase agreement, the Tema LNG project, has had a take-or-pay component. Take-or-pay is a reality in our situation because of confidence. A 330 megawatt combined cycle plant on the average will cost about $500 million in our sub-region. Is the country director of World Bank saying that the IFC, International Finance Corporation, which is an arm of the World Bank, are they saying they will fund a project worth $500 million and not demand a guarantee or an offtake agreement? In developing country scenarios, especially in our part of the world with instability, no investor is going to put $500 million in a plant in your country and say pay only when you take the power. Other than that, we must always remember that for power plants and for normal international business projects, project finance is 30% equity, 70% loan. Debt. That is the normal ratio, 30 equity, 70 debt. How are you going to service the debt if revenue will come in only when there is offtake of power? And that is why there is a capital recovery or capacity charge. When the plant does not run and the plant is not faulty, there are conditions set up in each contract. Once the plant is available and it's not running, you are not taking the full cost. If it's not running, it's not consuming fuel. Fuel is the biggest single cost in running a plant. You only take your capital recovery, which enables you service the facility. And that is why a new AXA agreement has been signed by this government. They signed an interim one when the AXA 5-year contract lapsed. The interim one had a take-or-pay. The new one for the AXA plant in Kumasi has take-or-pay. The new PPA for the AXA plant in Tema has take-or-pay. The Tema LNG project is a take-or-pay 20-year project contracted by this government. It is not for nothing, because investors will want to be assured that there is going to be a revenue flow, that their investment will not lie idle with no revenue. No project can get to financial closure without the funders being sure that there will be revenue flow to service the facility. And so I am quite surprised that the country director of the World Bank will make such aspersions without examining the reality.
What's the reality? I want to bring in now Dr. Yusuf Sulemana, who's an energy policy strategist. Thank you for spending some time with us. So, a divided opinion on this matter. Some say take or pay is helpful. Others believe it's part of the problems that we face now. But looking at the landscape, our capacity, demand, and where we are now in terms of our energy needs, would you say that the take-or-pay is indeed the way to go, Doc?
Yeah, thank you very much, Blessed, and good afternoon to you and your cherished viewers. It's just unfortunate that I have to enter into this conversation when it's taking political dimension. Whenever it takes such a dimension, it vitiates, right judgment. However, I mean, we still have to talk about it. If you look at what brought about, this kind of agreement in the first place, you see, if you don't have alternative, Blessed, and then you are pressed, nobody can tell you that. Nobody can tell me that. Take or pay is better than take and pay. Take and pay will always give you strategic advantage, But like I listened to the minister quite well, and he's right in some areas, in a way that there are some clauses, there are some areas where take and pay or take or pay, it could be used, especially when the supply is just constrained, and sometimes even the requester, the one who is the off-taker, sometimes will request that I need take or pay because I want to secure, the product, or I want to secure the commodity. So in that instances, take and pay, take or pay is just what is okay, and that one has to be an agreement between the buyer and then the seller. And I mentioned again that usually the buyer sometimes will even ask for it because he wants security of the product. But what was our situation? Our situation was that, we're just pressed. If you look at the time that it happened.
That was the reality at the time when we're facing all of the energy crisis. But for how long will this persist? That's the question. Of course, former Power Minister indicating there that even the new agreement signed by this incumbent government also deal with the take-or-pay situation. So it's become a norm for our policymakers.
A very good one, Blessed. And that's why I was just moving myself, gravitating to. And it's good you made that interjection. Right. So that's what I'm saying, that I was just trying to paint an agreement that is not so 100% devilish. If you look at analysis point of view, objective point of view, that take or pay, no way. Like I mentioned, sometimes the buyer may even request for that. But to take that as a norm, I have every problem with that. So, because, see, if you go into such an agreement like a take or pay, and then you continue to put yourself in that agreement, you're going to be boxed in at a point in time that you may not even need the product, and you have to pay for that. So yes, if you put take or pay and take and pay, especially at the situation that we find ourselves, I struggle to find a justification why we should still push ourselves into take or pay agreements. Because at the end of the day, you, the off-taker, unless you are phenomenally efficient to make sure that your power availability is there, that you can always take advantage of the situation and run it continuously, and which is not possible with respect to the inherent inefficiency that we have with our infrastructure. We can't have that. So there's always bound to be that capacity charges. So I still maintain that going forward, this take or pay contracts, we have to look into it. We have to look into them. The contracts, we have to look into them and make sure that if there's a possibility of actual renegotiating to stand to be competitive, then we have to do that. However, if the renegotiation process will compound the issue, because my understanding is that the information I'm picking is that some of the power purchase agreement that they tried to renegotiate, we ended up compounding the situation. That way we can't live with that. So yes, I stand by the point that, or I'm of the view that we can go for renegotiation if to grant us competitive advantage. And yes, and if there's any new contract that is going to be signed, let's put all things on to bear. We don't have that too much pressure on us. If there's the finances that the former minister is talking about, there can always be a way out. So at this moment in time, I will not support the idea of going for any take or pay, because that will only it will not deliver its competitive advantage.
Here's the situation. We're still finding ourselves in that desperate position. In just about 25 days, the IPPs may withdraw services if funding is not made available. The decision to going for building plants is a long-term capital project, which we can't fulfill, I'm not sure, in the next 3 or 4 years. You tell us, though. So between a rock and a hard place, that's where we find ourselves now. what's your recommendation in terms of the approach the finance minister ought to use at this moment? Satisfy the IPPs with the take or pay, or we go off for some time, go back to the dark days of doomsday and look for a sustainable means, which will be possibly building a plant which will take us away about 4 years or more. That's where we find ourselves now.
Yes, that's very interesting. I doubt if just that we need to build new plants, Blessed. Okay. We have the infrastructure available. We just need to be efficient. The bane of our problem is the fact that we are not efficient. I'll take you back to this World Bank recommendation. If they look at the recommendation that they gave, where they recommended that we have to liberalize or to diversify, or in a better way, to allow private sector participation into the power sector. Actually, they didn't single out only the generations aspect of it. They also included distribution aspect of it. And like I already mentioned on this, your platform, I mean, this power, value streams, the generation, distribution, and then the transmission, they are so intricately linked. And so if there's an inherent inefficiencies in any of the stages, the cascading impact on the other stage is going to be dire. And so we can't say we are so pressed that we have to go to take or pay and compound the problem. It will compound the problem, undoubtedly. What we need to do is to be efficient. And we have to be efficient in every value stream that we find ourselves. In this case, I will always come to the distribution aspect of it. They recommended that we diversify, we liberalize, this aspect as well. But we couldn't do that. For whatever better reason, we didn't do that. And you saw the kind of inefficiency that we have. And we always resort to the fact that increment in tariffs is the panacea to solving our problems. And I always say that is not the panacea. That could end up compounding the problem. What we need to do, I'll come back. We have to get the fundamentals right. What are the fundamentals? Let work to become phenomenally inefficient in all these processes, especially the distribution arm of it. That is where the cash flow, that is where the money comes from. Why is the IPPs complaining? Because the supply or the money that they supply to the user, the end user, the money is not coming back. Power is generated, it is given to the end user. The money is not coming back. Where is the money going to? Meanwhile, the power is given. So this is the problem. So I would recommend that let's make concerted effort. I know the distribution aspect, ECG and Co, they are doing so well, and they are, they are trying to revitalize their revenue handles to be able to curb the inefficiencies. So if they can do well to curb the inefficiencies within especially the distribution chain, as well as other chains, I think, and we can guarantee cash flow. We don't need to box ourselves in like take and pay for the fact that we don't have money to do that. Where is the money going? And it's not that take or pay is going to solve that problem. Blessed. That is not going to. Why is it to solve the problem as we have?
And what may complicate the situation is the impending audit of the agreement itself. So even as renegotiation may take place, the audit has to start first, and the IPPs are not taking that. If that moves beyond the end of the month, the power will still go off.
I just want to believe that, and I just want to pray that cool heads will prevail. I know the IPPs, they are businessmen. They are in to make profits. But I just want to believe that I want to urge them, to sit down with the policymakers of the day, to be fair to each other, and then look at Ghanaian populace put the populace into the picture. I know it's a very difficult thing, but we have to look at that. We can't afford to go back into doomsday at all. So whatever the government can do for them to meet the IPP demand halfway, so that they can be, and I believe there can always be a way to agree. There's no way we can have agreement between two parties. So I'm just hoping that cool heads will prevail. These parties can come together, and then they can meet the IPP's demand halfway, in a way that we don't have doomsday, because doomsday is not anything that any Ghanaian will wish for at this moment in time. Yeah. Blessed.
Certainly not a place I would want to go back to. But anyway, we're grateful for your time. We'll wait to see what the outcome of the engagements will be. Dr. Yusuf Sulemana joining us with his specialist thoughts on these matters. But in the energy sector as well, Saudi Arabia, as we understand, is cutting oil production by 1 million barrels a day in a bid to prop up oil prices. The announcement was made after a meeting of OPEC Group, Plus Group of producers in Vienna yesterday. In response to the announcement, crude prices have experienced some sharp surge, reaching new heights in the global market. The West Texas, of course, is selling and sold to some $73 and $27 per barrel, reflecting a substantial increase similar to the Brent crude oil, recording a significant rise, reaching some $77.64 per barrel. So what does that mean for the Ghanaian market, for instance? I want to bring in policy analyst Peter Tekpe, who's also watching the figures closely. You've been paying attention to that. It has some level of implication, not just for the transport sector, even the energy sector will suffer from this. You're watching the figures. What do they tell us, and what's the implication for a country such as Ghana?
Thank you very much. Indeed, this is not good news for Ghana, because we actually coming out of a situation where we're hoping that we will recover, as an economy, but unfortunately, we're hearing these things. And these are some of the things that we cannot avoid because we don't have control over it. The reason is that our, forex reserves is highly depleted, and we know that one of the areas that causes the depreciation of the cedi is when demand is high. And of course, because of the level of import we almost importing all the, toll is down. So all the petroleum products we are using now, we are importing, which means that Ghana will have to look for more forex to be able to buy. And once the demand for forex goes up, of course, then it will have impact on the pricing at the pumps. And so what we have to then look at as a nation, because we import almost everything that we are actually consuming, then we have to look at an alternative. And I think that the good for oil policy that government brought, we have to look at how we can streamline it to benefit the Ghanaian.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately, that's not happening anytime soon. You take a look at the IMF conditionality, and that policy may have to be reviewed. So that will be a challenge for us. You agree?
Yeah, it will be a challenge, but IMF also knows that in as much as they are coming in to help us, the situation is going to make the situation worse off. And so if the reason why you are coming to help us is not to make us worse off, and there are conditions for which will bring that situation, then of course then you have to also look at your conditions, because how will Ghana mobilize forex to be able to import? The sources of importation, the source of importing crude, of course, we all know that we need to go to the market to look for forex to buy. Unfortunately, we cannot go to the international market as we used to do to borrow or to get FX. Our reserves is currently less than 3 months of import cover, very low. And we are consuming over $400 million even a month. That should tell you how much we need to be able to stay afloat, because we can't afford to get the economy to run to a halt when there's no crude product or oil in the country. And so this is a very significant or sensitive aspect of running the country, such that we cannot afford to run out. And so definitely IMF, since they are coming in to support, they will not let us worse off. And that is the reason why I'm saying that we have to look at an alternate policy. An alternate policy we have is, of course, is the oil for gold policy. If IMF want to cancel it, there could be a reason why they want to cancel it. So how do we restructure it such that it will benefit the Ghanaian?
Yeah, at least they're not the ones asking that we cancel that as conditions precedent. Of course, the Ministry of Finance has signed that agreement, an MOU with the Bank of Ghana, indicating that there will be strict zero financing. So that arrangement alone knocks us off the market in terms of running the gold for oil policy. It's not happening soon. It may not happen anytime soon.
We will, looking at the current circumstances, that is what we'll say, that it's not happening soon. But I am saying that looking at the circumstances in which we find ourselves now as a nation, we need support from IMF. There are conditions that we have to meet. If the conditions is going to make the country worse off, assuming that Ghana cannot mobilize FX or forex to import crude and prices keeps going up, and everything comes to a halt, what is the benefit of the IMF then? That is why I'm saying that, of course, the policies are made to be complied with, but when circumstances change, then, of course, you need to go back and revise and see how you can calibrate the process or the policies or the conditions to be able to help you, run the economy. And that is the most important.
Yeah, but why, I'm just wondering, why focus on the precious metal when we have options upstream? Are you ruling that out?
the options we have upstream, we all know that our production capacity has not been as expected for some time now. And so even if we should bring all that we are producing to even consume, how are we going to do that? Because toil is down. That is why we need to be very intentional in looking at some of our strategic, assets, such like toil, so that we will revive it, because this is the time when this is needed. Of course, we also have BOST there, but government need money to import to fill the tanks at BOST. Where is the money? Do we have to go outside and look for funds? But of course, now looking at the condition, it will be very difficult for an investor to come in to say they are supporting you with funds. That is why we need to look at the aspect within our capacity that we can manage, of course, and this is one of them. So if you have resources that you can use even as a barter for you to get the economy running, of course, then it is just prudent enough for you to go for that. And that is, you see, the vote for oil is not a bad idea. It's about the management. And that is why people are calling for transparency. And I think that if that is done, of course, the benefit, because this is not going to happen forever. It is because of the circumstances we find ourselves now. If Ghana should be able to go to the international market now to borrow and be able to have enough forest reserves, of course, all this will be in the past.
And for some, this is just the markets reacting to what OPEC is doing, and that things may stabilize soon. What's your own outlook of how far we may go, probably with a surge or otherwise?
The honest thing is that because of the way things are going now, you cannot predict what OPEC will come out with, because you see, every economy is struggling now. And so then these guys are also business people, and they're looking for higher returns, of course. And so when they look at circumstances where they will be impacted negatively, then this is how they can come in. So you see, it's a cartel. And we don't have capacity yet at this cartel at all. And so I would say that in the coming days, the factors, you see, COVID should teach us a lesson that circumstances can come up that you don't have control over. And so as an economy, as a country, what we should be focusing on is how to manage ourselves properly, such that we will not find ourselves in this situation, because today is COVID, tomorrow nobody knows what is coming. And looking at what is happening now, nobody can tell tomorrow. It may not be even just OPEC, it may be another thing else. That is why we need to look at your space. What can you do within your capacity to be able to manage yourself, such that in circumstances such as this, when everybody is struggling, every economy is struggling, you'll be able to at least have something reserved to be able to manage yourself. And that's why it's very, very important that the managers of the economy start looking at the long term rather than looking at the short term, so that we build an economy that will sustain shocks that cannot be predicted.
Okay. We'll wait to see what the future holds about. But in terms of your personal outlook, a good one, what would you advise the general public?
Well, for me, the outlook is that the general public must just, prepare for, uncertainties. The reason is that we can get up tomorrow and then the prices can go up that we do not expect. And so, of course, nobody can also have tanks in his or her home and go and buy fuel and be storing. What we can do is for us to be able to prepare our minds, prepare our, if you are a business and you are running and you need fuel or you need plant, or you have a plant, then of course you need to start looking at how to be planning for some reserves so that you use it in times of difficulty. That's the only way out. Other than that, now nobody can predict anything anymore, because anything at all can happen any day.
Okay. We'll leave it here for now. Peter Tech, policy analyst, joining us on the latest developments in terms of the crude prices. But there's a lot of developments even regarding what's happening to geopolitics, because 19 countries around the world are seeking to form an alliance with Russia in creating a common currency for international trade and other related financial transactions. The Russian government is seeking to counterweight the West by leveraging on its traditional allies in a bid to find an economic lifeline, as sanctions over the country's war with Ukraine continues to bite at. Over the weekend, foreign ministers from Russia, Brazil, India and China were hosted by the South African government in a bid to deepen ties in spite of the Western-led attempt to sanction Russia over its aggression against Ukraine. Sergei Lavrov, who's the Russian foreign minister, says the move will try and transform geopolitics around the world. Let's get more on this. Isaac Afieje is our data analyst here at Joy News. He's been looking at the figures. And Isaac, we know traditionally the BRICS to be traditionally 4 countries, I should say, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Why are we having more countries to the tune of 19 seeking to join this alliance in forming a new currency?
Well, so the baseline is very simple. Now, there's a current second force that all these countries, it tells you that countries have been wanting this for a very long time. And now that they feel there's a superpower in there, which is China, there's Russia, there's Brazil, there's India, and there's also an African country. So all these countries feel that it is now time to move on. It is now time to move, on from this Western, situation and all of that. But the reason why we have different countries wanting to join is because of the superpowers involved. There's Russia, there's also, China. And if you look at the weight of BRICS, and in terms of economic-wise, the power that they wield, China, for instance, is having a GDP of about, 18 trillion. Yeah. There's also India. And if you combine all of these BRICS countries together, they control about 40% of the global population, and also about 1/4 or 2/3 of the global GDP.
So there's a significant market share, first of all. Exactly. And they also have world capital. Mm-hmm. That's how crucial this is.
That's how crucial it is. And the fact that you have China and Russia and India involved, it's a bingo for these countries.
Okay, but here in Ghana, we're very much concerned about a country such as China joining this alliance because when you look at our figures, highest trading partner, and in fact, when it comes to our debt, external debt, we're talking about China being in the lead as compared to the other parts. How is this likely to impact countries such as Ghana? That are heavily reliant on capital from China, for instance?
I think in Ghana, we've made it very clear that we are not aligned. We continue to do trade with different countries and blocks as long as it is beneficial to us. So I don't think Ghana is going to align either to the West or to BRICS, but they will put in place measures to make sure that we benefit from.
But there will be implications for us.
There will be implications because you can't be in the middle forever. You definitely would have to take probably a predominant side or have to be on one side than the other. But per the look of things, you know that Ghana is a little bit, leaning towards the West, but they still haven't stopped doing business with China. The last time we're looking at the data and realized that Ghana has racked up about 5 billion worth of, project loans from China alone. I do not see that amount of money being invested by any single Western country into this country. Mm-hmm. So it tells you that although we know our geology, we know the people where we are, aligned with, where we align with, but we still have measures in place to make sure that we sit in the middle and try to tap from both sides of the coin. But the whole idea is to put an end to the dominance, the dollar dominance, where currently we have some of the countries who are part of the BRICS having an agreement to trade in their local currencies, because there have been talks around having a common currency. And if you're having a common currency, you should know that it will come with its own challenges. We saw it happening with the EU, where all member countries had to give up their local currencies, surrender their local currencies to use the euro. Is it going to happen with BRICS, or are they going to fall on the Chinese one to do business? But what is currently happening is that there's an opportunity for countries that are involved in BRICS to still trade in their local currency. So if Brazil is trading with China, they can use the yuan. If China is trading with Russia, there's also that same transaction going on. So that is what we are seeing.
And what's also striking is we need to pay attention to this 19 countries joining this sort of idea to have a common currency, because when this happens, you'd find the likes of the United Arab Emirates, Iran, and some other countries in the Middle East joining this. Also crucial to our conversation.
Very crucial, because we are talking about the dollar and we're also talking about crude oil, because it looks as if the dollar is what is being used to control the crude oil. So, for instance, globally, we have all transactions going on across the globe. About 80% of all transactions are held in dollars. if you talk about countries having reserves, they hold reserves in the US dollars. Even Russia that received this magnitude of sanctions, they had their bank reserves of about 300 billion US dollars frozen because of the sanctions that US placed on them. So the whole idea is to end the dollar dominance. So if you have, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all these countries coming in, remember they are, countries that export a lot of oil. And if they join and they decide not to export or import in with the dollar, then it simply means that the US is losing their sanctioning power that they are able to use on other countries. So it's a good thing for BRICS, but on the other hand, I'm sure the West or the US is also watching closely, because this is geopolitical, thing going on, and then they would want to know what will be their next move.
I want us to go back to that chart. We'll get to the chart anyway, but let's bring in Dr. Ishmael Honvo, who's an international relations expert. And Doc, you've been watching these developments since last week when the BRICS foreign affairs ministers met in Cape Town in South Africa. Of course, many were stunned by that announcement that this is going to happen. 19 countries expressing that level of interest, that they want to partner with BRICS so they form a common currency. How will this play out, and what will be the implications for countries such as Ghana?
Okay, good afternoon to you and your viewers and listeners. This development is interesting because of the current geopolitical space we find ourselves. So I think what these countries are essentially trying to do is to create an alternative to the dollar that has been used as a weapon of control over various economies, and even used as a weapon of sanctions. So when you are able to create an alternative currency where you can trade among yourself without necessarily relying on the dollar, you are virtually winning yourself off U.S. influence. For instance, if you look at some of the sanctions that have targeted Russian entities because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, if much of the trading is not in dollars, it will be difficult to enforce some of the sanctions that have been imposed upon Russia. So virtually what these countries are seeking to do is to ensure that they put themselves in a position where they will be able to avoid the dominance that the U.S. and the Western world has held over them for years. So if they're able to create this international trading and currency regime, which allow them more flexibility, it may also allow them to manage their own debt more without being caught in this geopolitical tension that is going around the globe. Of course, it is also a mark of countries trying to readjust their strategies and refocus and be more resilient within the geopolitical space that we are currently in.
For a country such as Ghana, which has China in that alliance, of course, we know that we're heavily reliant on China, for instance, in terms of trade and capital. How's that likely to affect us?
So it may be positive for us in the sense that one of the problems we have faced is the dollarization of our own economy and the fact that we excessively trade in dollars. So although we have a lot of trade relation with China, we are not necessarily using the RMB in those trading. So most of the time, we are forced to make use of the dollar. You know, China itself have become a lender of last resort most internationally. So countries, particularly southern nations, developing nations, are able to rely on some currency swap deals with China to rescue themselves when they are financially in the downturn. So it may offer the opportunity for us to see how we could diversify in terms of the currencies we use internationally. That may help somehow lessen the dependency on the dollar and give us a leeway to choose and some independent path in terms of foreign policy. So it is important development that the Ghanaian authorities should monitor and see how best, perhaps we could join and benefit more from this initiative. Now, so this initiative, because it is a number of countries that are coming together, it may not be under the control of a particular nation, so that if the central bank of that nation is raising interest rates, it will have a ripple effect on us, because it's an international currency that they are seeking to create. That also presupposes that there will be an international system of managing that currency. So once we create that international system, decision-making will be more collaborative. It will take into account the interests of all the partners that are involved. So it is more of something that we can benefit from than the dollar that currently dominates our system.
So here's the case. In the wake of the Russian-Ukraine war, Putin is under siege, of course, with the Western-led sanctions. One will wonder why all of these countries are increasing their alliance with Russia, which is facing serious sanctions around the world.
The point is that there are various interpretations of this particular Russian-Ukraine war. To Western perspective, it is Russian aggression. To some other perspective, it is the activity of equal expansion of NATO and the European Union. So depending on where you sit and how you view the situation, it may appear to some nations as Western provocation has led to this situation. So some nations will be looking at it that, well, given the situation in Ukraine and the response of the West, they look at a situation where the dollar has been used, trade has been weaponized and used against other nations. So it becomes important for them to create this alternative, which will allow them to win themselves off U.S. influence, because they may potentially also have their own differences with the U.S. So if one of them, like Russia, is being treated the way it is, yes, it may be prudent for the rest of them to want to create an international system that virtually helps them to avoid the Western-led system. Indeed, this is part of the ongoing reconfiguration of global market and global financial market, and of course, global geopolitics. So various formations like this will come depending on the interests of the various actors involved, where they think that their interests lie. For example, if they perceive that given the volume of trade and investment relations they have with China and Russia, it is important they align and go that way, then they will have to do that. So yes, the globe is going through a period of transformation and reconfiguration of global market, global finances. We are likely to see some of this realignment playing out as the process unfolds.
Of not the decision, but the fixation now will be on South Africa. Why have an African country in the midst of all these geopolitics? It's as though we're drawing some sort of a new Cold War closer to the continent. That's not healthy for us, is it?
You need to understand South African foreign policy. Between Russia and South Africa, when South Africa was battling apartheid, the Russians, the Chinese were more sympathetic to their cause. So sometimes historical antecedents play a role in how countries relate to certain actors within the international system. So you realize that the U.S. took a very long time to even come on board to push apartheid out of the system. So you have to understand that, yes, well, it may appear as if they are drawing a sort of Cold War policies onto the African continent. It is important that countries will not necessarily align their foreign policy based on certain conception of this is better than this one. It is all dependent on your historical antecedent. It depends on your current situation and what you think is best for you. South Africa has been a member of BRICS, and of course, it sees its future perhaps tied to this group. So therefore, if the group is taking a decision of this magnitude, it is important that I think that Africa be represented. Of course, BRICS does not necessarily mean Chinese control. If you look at the BRICS group, indeed, it's a very diversified group. For instance, China and India do not always sing from the same hymn book. But when it comes to issues that tie them together, they may sing from the same hymn book. So while BRICS may represent a common denominator for them, it does not always mean that their foreign policy will be aligned to a particular support of Russia. But it also means that they are looking at where their interest lies in future, in the sense that these are growing powers, also that, well, perhaps there is this attempt to prevent one of them from taking a center stage. Therefore, maybe it's an indication of what may happen in the future. So, yes, we are already in a situation where the globe is fragmented and polarized, and therefore we will see, as I said, more of this realignment of powers to try to take advantage or protect their own interests when they deem it fit.
Okay, then. Grateful for your time, Dr. Ishmael Lonvo, there, unpacking the issues for us. But let's not lose sight over the impact of the European Union and of course, multilateral platforms such as the IMF and the World Bank.
Well, a lot of countries now believe the IMF is more or less an extension of a Western power, because in 1944, when it was established, the US was a leading force and is currently the biggest shareholder of the world.
But we keep going back there anyway.
Absolutely, because that's where we can get, cheaper loans. But even if you look at Ghana's situation, for instance, in our quest to do an external debt restructuring, it took us 2 BRICS countries, China, India, to come on board before we were able to get the IMF program. So just like Doc said, probably you don't have to align, but you need to have a fantastic game plan. Without a game plan, you can be forced or pushed to align yourself, but you don't need to align. You just need to watch the situation carefully, devise a plan or a game plan, and make sure that you are able to deal with this, whether the West or BRICS.
But sure just compare over the period, the amounts we've gained, for instance, from tilting towards the West and the East. When that comparison is made, where are we likely to be leaning towards?
Well, then let me put it this way. So
okay.
If you look at single countries that we owe, for instance, like Ghana owing a single country, so bilateral agreement. So we owe China, that's the biggest, 1.9 billion. The next is followed by India. We owe them, I think, around $475 million. Then there's also, you can talk about the Western countries. There's this UK, the same around 400 million. There's Belgium. You don't even mention the US, or you don't mention any other, France or Germany.
Right.
But these, France, Germany, they still have powers because they are able to bring to you some programs and policies that will bring in indirect funding, like you see from the World Bank, the UK aid, the US aid, and all that. They are present in your country. They don't only give you monetary support, but they give you technical support. That is what they feel BRICS and probably China and co, they lack, because they will give you the money, all right, but it will not exactly. It will be in a form of barter trading or that. They don't give you the technical support. So we need to have a game plan.
Interesting days ahead. We'll see what this will bring to us as a country. But Isaac Ofiaje joining us with the figures there on this latest development. You're watching The Pulse on the Joy News channel. We'll get back with some more stories. Please stay. An environmental-based NGO, eco-conscious citizens, are asking government to immediately halt the community mining program in forest reserves. At a news conference to commemorate the World Environment Day, the group indicated that the NGO said that the cost of community mining to the country outweighs the benefit. Awula Sewa is coordinator of the group.
Our demands are: number one, rescind the declassification of Achimota Forest Reserve. 2, pause community mining. We cannot even monitor the big mining companies. If you have so many community mining operators, you can't monitor and pause it, so that we don't have all our waters being poisoned. Highlights, every single one is a highlight. We are saying, first of all, this is the second page, hold the directors of Akonta Mining accountable for destroying portions of the Tano Nimiri Forest Reserve. Take action on the Joy News documentary, which was Gold for Destruction. Set up a public inquiry into Professor Frimpong Boateng's report. I mean, this is cardinal. Then develop the green economy. You cannot tell us that you're getting so much from community mining when you don't even know the cost of community mining. When you destroy the lands, do you know how much it costs to reclaim the land? It costs far more than we are making. So it's about not being penny wise and pound foolish. Getting 1.2 billion. Have you costed the diseases that are coming because of the mercury and other poisons within the water and the land? You haven't. So the 1.2 billion doesn't mean anything when you haven't given me the cost of people's lives, people falling into pits and so on and so forth. So what we are saying is that unless you are going to do these things, the whole thing doesn't make any sense to any of us. The message out there is that if you are serious about Green Ghana, look at our press release and take seriously the recommendations that we have made. Let me just look at the first page. Look seriously at the recommendations that have been made. Revoke, I keep on saying the same thing, revoke the classification of Achimota Forest Reserve, revoke the LI that is making it possible to mine in forest reserves and even in globally biodiversity significant areas if the president deems it fit. Revoke or shall I say pause community mining. It is not helping us. So unless you're going to do those things, we don't think it is useful to be taking part in Green Ghana because we see it more as a gimmick, not as anything we are seriously concerned about.
Well, let's bring in Awula because she's joining us via Zoom now. Thank you for your time. And we all know the reason for which government opted for the community mining scheme. It's as though it's an alternative to ending issues of illegal mining. So why ask government to halt the policy when it's meant to provide some alternate livelihood for teeming youth?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hello?
Loud and clear.
Yes. Thank you very much. What we are saying is that, community mining has its hazards. Even mining, when it comes to big companies, there are challenges. And our monitoring and enforcement regime is not as robust as it should be. So even the few, we have difficulties in monitoring them. How much more when you have so many community mining operatives? It's just madness. So what we are saying is that pause it till you get your act together. And let's be clear, the livelihood is not just, we're not just thinking about those coming to mind. What about the cocoa farmers who are losing their livelihood? Have we considered them? What are they supposed to do now when we destroy their cocoa farms for community mining?
Yeah, I get that. But there's also a problem at hand for government to deal with. Scores of people, and just somewhere last week, you heard about that story of some group of young persons going into a mining concession, and we all know that the rest of the story. That's the cycle in which the youth find themselves. So how about providing some small schemes, concessions for them to at least mine responsibly?
You see, I mean, there's armed robbery going on. People say because they don't have work to do. We can't condone armed robbery. I mean, it is just an act of criminality to go into somebody's concession and just go and help yourself. It's an act of criminality. And we deal with criminal activity in the way that the law says we should do. Yes, it's government's responsibility to provide jobs. And I totally agree that jobs should be provided for the youth. There's no point in having people unemployed. It's, the devil has work for idle hands. So whilst the government is doing its duty to find jobs, which it should be doing, we cannot condone illegality. Now with the community mining, we cannot see the color of our rivers. We all know what is happening within the food chain, how poisonous substances are entering the food chain through the food and livestock and so on and so forth that we consume. Are we going to say that because of that it should be a free-for-all? We are not against mining. What we are saying is that it should be done in a responsible manner. And when we cannot ensure that that is the case, we leave it. And even the mining, there are some places where we should not mine at all. We cannot mine in forest reserves. There's a reason why we have forest reserve. And yet the government has passed a law, or a law has been passed, which will enable mining in globally significant biodiversity areas if the president thinks it's in the national interest. It can never be in the national interest to cause destruction. So what we are saying is that we need to get our priorities right.
What more are you looking for aside that decision?
We know we're looking for so many things. I mean, if you look at excuse me for that, if you look at the press release, we are saying, for instance, we need to be a little serious about greening Ghana. You can't be greening Ghana on one hand, and on the other hand, you are declassifying parts of Achimota forest. We need to take care of the existing forests. So that's why we are saying keep your existing forests, whether it's Achimota Forest Reserve, whether it's a Tiwa Forest Reserve, and therefore you do not go around mining bauxite there when you've been told that not only will it destroy the ecosystem, but it will also poison the source of water to over 5 million Ghanaians. We've talked about the directors of Akonta Mining. If they have gone and caused destruction, they should be held accountable. They should be prosecuted. And we should have the policy of the polluter pays. They have any assets, if they are prosecuted and convicted, then their assets should be used as part of the cleanup. You cannot destroy and just walk away. We're looking at Professor Frimpong Boateng's report that it should be properly investigated, and we should have a public inquiry, not anything behind closed doors, so that people with information can bring it forward, and then whatever report comes out should also be public, so it doesn't sit on somebody's desk for the next 2 years. So these are some of the points that we are making, and the good documentary that Joy News made. We believe that there's so much information in that documentary. A year has passed. What is the result? Has anybody been arrested? Have we found who were those individuals in army uniform purporting to guard illegal miners? Have we found out who they were? Have they been held accountable, prosecuted? Until these things are done, I'm not quite sure we're going to move forward.
And what's your suspicion as eco-conscious citizens as to why we're not seeing action on these exposés and series of documents released even by some former government appointees?
I mean, bless you, I think your guess is as good as mine. I mean, if people close to you are complicit, then you are finding it very difficult to do something about it. But we want to encourage His Excellency the President. He was bold enough to say he was putting his presidency on the line. He can't serve another term. So what we are asking him to do is to be bold. Those who are involved, whether they are close to the party or not, hold them accountable, deal with them. I mean, look at the images you are showing. It's just terrible. Do we want to wait till everybody in Ghana is poisoned before we take action? So it doesn't matter whether they are close to the party, far away from the party, high flowers, low flowers. For heaven's sake, deal with them. And that will send the message that will come after anybody who is destroying our environment. It's not just about us, it's about the next generation. You know, what is happening is totally wicked and unacceptable.
Yeah.
We cannot just poison everywhere in sight when the next generation has to come and also live in a poisoned environment.
We need action, and I agree with you on that. Awolasewa, thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, in our second episode of Ghana's Potholes exhibition, Features Editor Jojo Kobina brings you some reasons why the government may not cover craters in the middle of the road.
Start looking like a drunk, needlessly turning the steering wheel. If you're wondering why the government is not fixing your potholes, well then, you guessed right. It is because there is no by-election in your constituency.
You've been agitating, demonstrating, crying out to government, and even praying to government to fix your potholes. But there is one man who is praying against that prayer.
If I'm a recorder, if I believe work almost 15 years in it. I say almost 6 months will be a mamma and Timiana, my baby, and I'm a cosa. The bomb prices will tell us. I said, and I'm a mayor. Yes, baby, said, be because I'm a person about Bay. I have a person I have a year. The person Bay. I didn't. Obviously, oh, may be not top money.
With so much passion fueled by hunger, he sometimes dangerously approaches drivers and sometimes weaves in between vehicles, begging for coins to put food on the table for his family. For 3 years, he has been filling these potholes with soil on the Iran Clinic stretch not only for the driving comfort of drivers and passengers, but to eke out a living. So would you be happier if God listened to your prayer instead? This crater is starting to take up the whole lane. A few meters away are well carved out potholes, more like asphalt or worry. They cover the entire stretch and you cannot save your car from them. So why not stop there for a game of a worry? Which office do you contact when the street is beyond pothole repair?
MP, why the ane say we be road no also on no road but assignment Zubaga said there be yon na DC Zubaga say yon na president na say some go for we mu aturu say na yegua na Ghana for mon dwen Ghana for say mon dwen na ma say ndi obi fa duan wo ni ansa wa hu say odada say go for na ma wu kwa no mu what a shock masa adwenwen gwa masa yaje we car we can pay breye so far pa wo ma we mu.
Yes, Ghana's roads can leave you enraged. So like COVID-19, you have to learn to live with it. When it rains, the craters become river wide, suitable for fishing. So I went for a hook and line. And oh, what a great catch it was, right in the middle of the road. So, with all these prospects, why would governments cover them up? Jojo Kobna, Joy News.
Okay, Jojo Kobna is here with us, and there are a lot of people sending me messages. They want to have dinner with you tonight.
Oh yeah,
for obvious reasons.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have been doing a lot of fishing. So, yeah,
but I mean,
I'm the fishman.
That's just depicting how serious this challenge of potholes all over the place is.
It is.
We need to tackle that.
It is. It's a very serious problem. You see, the thing is that Iran clinic, we all use that particular stretch because it's very close to our office. I mean, and I had noticed that over the years, over the months, you realize that it's just a small pothole, and then it widens, and then we are quiet, and then you see this young man filling it, and then we are quiet about it, and nothing ever happens. So I've been asking myself, when you see a pothole, who do you go to? Which office do you go to? Do you go to Urban Roads, or do they come and repair it? Like, is there a hotline that you can actually call and report a pothole and say that there's a pothole here, and so let's go and fix it? Can you go and fix it? Do we have something like that? It seems, we leave them to develop, widen, the entire stretch is taking, and then after some time, we go back, vote a lot of money to go back to redo the roads, and then the roads go back.
So the maintenance culture is bad itself.
It's terrible.
And we're not even doing anything about them. This is the second in the series, I believe.
Yeah, it is the second.
I mean, what was striking was what the commercial driver indicated to you. The fact that every leader appears to be shifting the goalpost. If you ask the DC says, well, just go and ask your MP. Your MP says, go and ask the road minister. Your minister says, ask the president. I mean, we keep going back and forth. But for you, where do you feel the solution lies?
Urban roads supposed to, look at our urban roads, and then, arterial roads, just the feeder roads, the normal, not the highways. The highways supposed to take care of the highway. The highways, okay, next week we bring in the highway.
Okay, you're focusing on that section.
Especially on that, we're just focusing on the
for now.
For now.
Yes.
And the problem is there. We see it all the time. Many people are even sending pictures and telling us, please come to our community. Community 22 is horrible.
Right.
People are saying, no, come to this community, and that we have worse situations. What you're even showing is just child's play. This shows that all across many parts of Accra and many parts of the country, the roads are bad. And so we need a system where we can be fixing these before they become big problems. And then we have to spend so much money to repair them. And I bet you when election approaches, that's where you see the huge trucks will come with sand, will come with stones, and then in a very short time, overnight, when you're sleeping, you wake up, and then they're trying to fix. Why don't you fix them as we go? I mean, and that is the problem. So portals, especially, we're exhibiting the portals, hoping that government will cover them up, so that they wouldn't have to spend so much money. It's not they, it's we, because it's not the government that is, the politicians, it's not their money, it is our money. So that they will use our money to fix them on time. And then we wouldn't have a situation whereby, and you know, many are ignoring the effect of these portals. When you have a serious, I mean, when you've lost a baby on it, because the people who have had miscarriages on the road, there are people who their cars are badly damaged, and people who die on the road because of a pothole, because you're trying to swerve, and then because you didn't see it on time, and you don't really use, and you don't have that pothole memory. You know pothole memory, when you're driving and you know that there's a pothole here, you instinctively...
Then you prepare a maneuver.
And when you don't know, you can slam it, and then immediately you press the brakes, or maybe veer off, you hit someone's car, and then there's an accident. We need to solve this.
We need to fix it.
A stitch in time.
And in fact, we're asking our viewers to also be part of that solution. Just join with the hashtag GH Potholes. It's part of the potholes.
And then they should share their stories. They should take videos, their experiences, and then we can hashtag it on Facebook, on Twitter, GH Potholes, and then let's see them, and we'll collect all of them, and then we are going to display them. So we're going to have a very grand exhibition, maybe in 2 weeks' time, where we would invite people to even print out their potholes, and then we are going to autograph them, we're going to sign them, and we are going to present them to the authorities so that they will do something about it.
They need to do something about this. Jojo Kobna, thanks for joining us. The next time I understand you're swimming. So, I mean, you can join Jojo Kobna to swim the next time he's on the road. But, I mean, this is a serious matter. You can also be a part of the solution. hashtag GH Potholes. And it's on all of our social media platforms. Just draw our attention, and then we solve. I mean, we share the problem and then draw the attention of the authorities. Any final words for our viewers? Something they
should keep their portals coming, and they should expose their portals, and then we'll help governments cover them up.
Okay, we won't fish in them again. Anyway, thanks, Jojo, for joining us. And that's all we have for you here on The Pulse. I'm Blessed Sudan. Log on to myjoyonline.com. Updates there for you. We'll see you next time. Next is Let's Solve Showbiz.